Hey, when you were a kid, or maybe even this morning, do you remember being told, not yet? Can I have a snack? Not yet. Can I open this present? Not yet. Can I stay out past midnight? Not yet. You're going to be hearing that phrase a lot in the next few weeks, but hopefully this series will help you see that phrase maybe in a better light. Because the phrase not yet can sometimes be a good thing. Waiting can be frustrating, whether it's a slow-moving line, your ride coming to pick you up, or it could be that person in your house that always takes too long to get ready. Some things we hate to wait for. But waiting is more possible when we know that it'll be worth it in the end. Whether it's your favorite roller coaster, the newest phone, whatever you're getting for your birthday, some things are worth waiting for, and they're even worth waiting for regardless of how long it takes. At your age, maybe you feel like you're often being told not yet. Maybe you're waiting to get out of school, learning how to drive, graduating, getting a job, being allowed to date, moving out, or going to college. Or maybe you're waiting to vote. We got a video we're going to play for you. So check it out here.
Do you think kids should be able to vote?
No. If they got a chance to vote, they might make a wrong choice. You have to grow up and think everything through before you start to vote.
Do you think you would make a good president?
I don't think right now, but probably in the future. Look, you can't be the president because if you were the president, you'd have to you might not know how much work you get and how much stress you'd probably get because a bunch of people would be crowding around you and taking pictures, and you'll be really stressed because a bunch of cameras coming down at you, maybe even helicopters just taking pictures is very stressing.
How do you know all this?
Listening to the facts that are really important, and it's taught me a lot.
How old are you?
6. I think we're good.
Are you done here?
Yeah.
No more questions?
No more questions. I'm good now.
Well, thank you, sir.
Bye.
Hey, this kid seems to have a pretty wise approach to something that we all struggle with. Sometimes we want the opportunities and the freedom that comes with growing up, but we aren't quite ready for them. So what do we do with these wants that require skills and experiences that we don't have yet? It's not like we will never get there, but living in the not yet is hard, especially during middle school and high school life. Sometimes feels like this never-ending waiting game. You might feel like you're constantly waiting to get older, to gain more freedom, or to find more clarity about your future. If you ever want to skip ahead in your story to see what kind of person you will become and what the future holds, I think you're going to like this series. For the next few weeks, we're going to talk about all the questions, the fears and frustrations, and the exciting thinking, the exciting thoughts we have about what our futures can bring. When we think about the future, there's so many reasons why we might feel frustrated with our progress in the present. Maybe we're taking longer to develop a skill than we had hoped. Maybe we're continuing to make that same mistake that we swore we would never make again. Maybe we're not sure how to make progress in the areas where we want to grow. I have experienced a stall in progress a couple times in my life. I experienced it a lot as a parent with my little kid. Just the other day, he really wanted to watch TV, Coco Melon specifically. And I was like, no, it's not happening. It is not happening. He got what he wanted. I've also experienced it when it comes to playing the guitar. I can play the guitar and play a couple chords, and I usually play at the house for myself and Silas and Paige. Silas always says, guitar, 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 like that, nonstop. Guitar, 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 until we pull it out. But well, the hardest part for me about the guitar is the strumming patterns. Anytime it comes to me learning strumming patterns, it is so frustrating for me. And no matter how old you are, it's normal to occasionally feel unhappy with the progress that you're making. For some of us, that frustration might lead us to work even harder and get even more frustrated at ourselves. For others, our frustration might make us give up and try something else or stop trying at all. Whether it's our hobbies, grades, training, relationships, or faith, we have to figure out how to make progress while being patient with ourselves at the same time. As we're in the waiting phase, the not yet of our futures, we might find ourselves asking big questions like, who am I? Who do I want to be? What does my future hold? What is my purpose? And if that's you, you'd probably find the book of Ecclesiastes interesting. It's a book of poetry in the Bible that wrestles with what might be the biggest question ever. What is the meaning of life? The author is a guy named King Solomon, who lived almost 3,000 years ago. And he's known for the incredible wisdom that God gave him. As Solomon was thinking about the meaning of his life and future, here are some of the words that he wrote. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, starting in verse 1. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear down and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do people really get for all of their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has placed eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. This is some of Paige's favorite scripture. Dying, tearing down, weeping, mourning, and war. Those don't really sound fun. But according to Solomon, even the uncomfortable and the painful parts of life have a time and a place. Did you catch me? You are experiencing things in your life that are painful, that are uncomfortable. Solomon wants you to know those have a time and place. I don't think Solomon wants us to ignore those slow, painful, and uncomfortable moments in our lives. I don't think he wants us to simply wait for them to end so that our future can then unfold. Instead, I think that Solomon is inviting us to realize every bit of our lives have a purpose, even the times that feel pointless or difficult. We've got a video we're going to play here involving some flowers. Solomon didn't promise that God would make life better or easier, that God would take away uncomfortable stuff or make everything perfect. Instead, Solomon said, God makes everything beautiful in its time. Time is sped up in these videos, but all of these flowers, they took time to grow into what they were meant to be. That's true for you and me as well. It takes time and effort to see the beauty of God's plans for us unfold. None of these flowers are technically perfect, but they're still beautiful. The same is true in our own lives. Life won't be perfect. Challenging things will happen to us. We'll make mistakes, and we'll need to get uncomfortable in order to grow and to change. When these flowers bloom, it's easy to celebrate the end result. But before these flowers could become everything that they were meant to be, they experienced long periods of waiting while growth was happening, even if it was barely noticeable. In the same way, when it feels like you're just waiting for someday, remember today has some value too. There's another book in the Bible called Revelation, written by the Apostle John. It's the very last book of the Bible. And it's not the book that people think to read when they're thinking about the here and now. It's a book that makes most people think about the future. Solomon said that no one can understand what God has done from beginning to end. But Revelation does give us some insight into what God has in store for us in the future. Revelation 21, starting in verse 1, it reads like this: Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, Look, God's home is now among His people. He will live with them, and they will be His people. God Himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. And the one sitting on the throne said, Look, I am making everything new. And then He said to me, Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true. This passage is talking about God's future plans for all of creation. But there's something important here about God's plans for us as individuals too. When we hear God say, I am making everything new. Does it remind you of Solomon saying what he said earlier in the book of Ecclesiastes, that God makes everything perfect in its timing? In both our individual lives and in all of creation, God is ready and able to make things new. When the Apostle John wrote the book of Revelation, he was offering encouragement to Jesus' followers. That God is present and at work in every moment. God can make things new, then, now, and forever. God can make things new when life is less than beautiful. God can make things new when we are longing for something that we don't yet have. God can make things new when we are waiting or when we are delayed. God can make things new when we are frustrated with our progress. The words of Solomon and John help us see everything is a work in progress. All of creation, and also all of us too. I cannot tell you exactly what God has in store for you or for your future, but here's what I do know. With God, it's going to be beautiful. So when you feel like you're waiting for someday, don't just ignore or wait for the uncomfortable parts of life to end. Remember how much value today has too. You are a work in progress, and that's more than okay. That's my bottom line for tonight, is you are a work in progress. So just on the count of 3, I want you to repeat that. 1, 2, 3. Check this video out. People love to talk about the progress of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. The before and after transformation is pretty cool, but not many people talk about what happens in the in-between. During that cocoon phase, this weird thing happens. It's messy, it's uncomfortable. Inside its cocoon, the caterpillar literally melts. It turns into goo. It's not pretty, it's gross, actually. But if Solomon were a caterpillar, I'm pretty sure that he would have said something about there being a time for melting into goo, because no caterpillar can skip that step. If a caterpillar wants to become the new, beautiful thing it's meant to become, it has to go through the process. My senior year of college, I messed my knee up playing football. It took me 2 full years to recover. Very frustrating for me. It was slow progress for the recovery of my health. However, God was working in my life, because during that time I met Paige, the woman that I would eventually marry and have a son with, the woman that I'd spend the rest of my life with. It took the injury of football, of my knee, to help me focus on other aspects of life other than just that game. Some of us are looking towards our dreams for the future, and we're ignoring the boring, painful, or uncomfortable moments that we're in right now. Others of us haven't really thought much about the future because we are so busy with the present. But if we want to become the people that God has designed us to be, the trick is to take care of both the now, to care deeply about the now, and the not yet. This week I want to challenge you to take 5 minutes every day and do 2 things. First thing I want you to do is notice the progress that you have already made. When you feel stuck, discouraged, or bored with where you are right now, take a few moments to think about how far you have already come. Maybe even write down some of these questions I'm about to go over with you. What has God already done in your life? How has your relationship with Jesus grown? What's a big lesson that you have learned? How have you grown or changed in the last year? What do you know or believe now that you didn't know or believe before? Ask God to help you make more progress. Since we are all a work in progress, and we always will be, take a few moments to reflect on how you can continue to become the person that God has made you to be. What questions do you have about your future that you would like God to answer? In what areas of your life do you need help trusting God more? What's a struggle, a behavior, or a temptation you need God to help you overcome? What's one way you need God's help to become more like Jesus? What's something you know that you can't accomplish without God's help? We're all work in progress. But isn't it exciting that we follow a God who is able to make all things new, even us? None of us are perfect, but with Jesus, we are in the process of becoming more of who God has made us to be. You're a work in progress. So keep going. Let's pray.